Part 26. My Retirement Life in Neon. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 251. Sakai Otoha subconsciously took the key, took it in her hand and asked, "Isn't this the one I put in the entrance?" But Lin Zian ignored her. Instead he picked up the trash can and shook it and said, "I didn't expect you didn't eat snacks." Sakai Otoha was speechless. "You think of me like this? Have you finished the homework I assigned?" Lin Zian put down the trash can and sat on the sofa, looking at the Dead House game on the LCD screen. "Yo. You still like this kind of game?" Faced with Lin Zian's ridicule, Sakai Otoha looked back at the screen, and then said stubbornly, "I have finished it a long time ago. If you don't believe me, you can test me." "What about the daily weight loss training? Have you had a relapse these days?" Lin Zian picked up the controller on one side and started playing the game. "What are you going to do?" Sakai Otoha's heart tightened when she saw him pick up the controller. She played this save file for half a month, and finally finished the 3 lines of sister, senior sister, and teacher. Once it was deleted, her half-month effort would be in vain. Lin Zian smiled at her reaction, then raised the controller in his hand and said, "Why don't you change your clothes? Otherwise, your wife will disappear." "I'll go right away." Sakai Otoha turned around and ran upstairs immediately after hearing this, forgetting to investigate the key. Lin Zian knew that he had a long way to go when he saw the waves of fat shaking when she ran. It was only a few minutes after Sakai Otoha changed into her swimsuit, but when she saw Lin Zian playing with those wives she had conquered in the game, a feeling of betrayal rushed to her heart. "Didn't we agree to be together for a lifetime? How come it's like this?" Under the pressure of Lin Zian, Sakai Otoha didn't dare to stop them, and could only watch their interaction. Humiliation. "Ah!" Sakai Otoha screamed, then rushed out and plunged into the swimming pool. "What?" Lin Zian looked at Sakai Otoha, who was going crazy outside in confusion, and said to himself, "Is she so addicted to the internet? She became like this just after leaving her hands. It seems that I have to help her correct it in the future." The cold pool water immediately enveloped Sakai Otoha. Maybe she didn't warm up this time. After entering, she felt colder than before. The thick fat couldn't resist it. Now she felt that her hands and feet were beginning to lose. Bang! Suddenly, a strong heartbeat sounded, and a heat flowed from the heart to the limbs, and the originally numb hands and feet recovered immediately. Sakai Otoha didn't care to think too much, and swam back to the pool under the instinct of survival. She looked back at the swimming pool when she stood on the solid land. Recalling that she was still a little palpitating just now, if it weren't for that heat flow, she would probably have drowned in the swimming pool. Sakai Otoha stood for a long time before she recovered, and then looked at Lin Zian on the other side of the French window. Seeing that he was still playing games, she felt angry. She walked in angrily, ignoring the water drops dripping from her body. "You!" Sakai Otoha stood in front of the TV to block Lin Zian's sight. "What's the matter?" But Lin Zian looked calm. Seeing Lin Zian's expression, Sakai Otoha's anger rose to the extreme, pointing at him and said, "I almost drowned just now, and you are still in the mood to play games here. Then what? I said a long time ago that this is your business. I just came to supervise you." Lin Zian put down the controller and looked at her. "Besides, this is because you didn't listen to my advice and jumped into the water without warming up. You." Sakai Otoha's hand pointing at him trembled, as if she was angry with Lin Zian's words. "If you want to play, don't ask me to come over. I promised you only supervision at the beginning." After Lin Zian said this, Sakai Otoha also got over the momentum and began to calm down. She didn't know why she suddenly got angry, but Lin Zian's indifferent face really made her feel like apologizing. "Since you want someone to watch you, I will meet your request." Lin Zian suddenly smiled. Then he picked up Xiaobai next to him and said, "It's decided to be you, Xiaobai." Huh, Sakai Otoha only then discovered Ziobai. After all, she didn't notice it just now because it was a black ball. It will come to watch you in the future. Lin Ziyan put Ziobai down, and it jumped off the sofa and looked at Sakai Otoha from a distance. Wait, Sakai Otoha raised her hand to interrupt Lin Ziyan. This time it was her turn to be a little confused. Why did a cat watch me? Lin Ziyan could see the deep doubt in Sakai Otoha's expression and explained, I am only responsible for making plans, and Ziobai is responsible for supervising you. A cat? Sakai Otoha looked unconvinced. She suspected that Lin Ziyan was taking revenge on her for what she had just done. What's wrong with the cat? Ziobai is much smarter than some people. Lin Ziyan looked at Sakai Otoha, and it was clear who he was talking about. Don't believe it. Seeing Sakai Otoha like this, Lin Ziyan said, then let's try it. Humph. Let's try it. Sakai Otoha looked unconvinced. Even if she was stupid, she could still hear what Lin Ziyan meant. Ziobai, come here and give her a whole life. Lin Ziyan waved to Ziobai. Meow. Ziobai stood up and walked slowly to him. Lin Ziyan picked up Ziobai, then walked to the phone and put Ziobai down. Remember this. Lin Ziyan tapped his finger on the landline, then said, call me. Lin Ziyan stepped back a few steps and came to Sakai Otoha, handed her the phone and said, watch it. After receiving the phone, Sakai Otoha still had a skeptical look on his face. He carefully checked Lin Ziyan's phone and looked at Ziobai after seeing nothing unusual. At this time, Ziobai had already knocked over the microphone with one paw, and then climbed on the buttons with two paws and pressed them one by one. Regardless of whether Ziobai successfully made the call or not, this scene made Sakai Otoha feel incredible. This cat is so smart. A short ringtone sounded, and Sakai Otoha watched the screen of the phone in his hand light up, and a sense of absurdity arose spontaneously. A cat can actually make a phone call. No, no. Sakai Otoha shook his head and said to Lin Ziyan, you must have trained it when you were at home. Yes. Of course I trained it, otherwise how could it remember my number? Lin Ziyan admitted without hesitation, it's just that it can remember my number. Looking at the harmless smile on Lin Ziyan's face, Sakai Otoha felt that he had been cheated. Why are you still standing here? Lin Ziyan glanced at Sakai Otoha, who was standing there, and said sarcastically, if you want revenge, you have to work hard. Forget it if you are like this. My Retirement Life in Neon. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 252. Humph. Just watch. Sakai Otoha turned around and walked out with an unconvinced look on her face. But she looked back every 3 steps, with a look on her face as if she had seen an alien. Of course, she was not looking at Lin Ziyan, but Ziobai, who was following her. When she walked, Ziobai walked, and when she stopped, Ziobai stopped. Now it was not her turn to disbelieve what Lin Ziyan had just said. After the two of them went out, Lin Ziyan picked up the handle thrown on the sofa again, muttering, I should have made the right choice. Why did this character turn against me? And Sakai Otoha, who was outside, began to experience the beginning of the nightmare. Sakai Otoha came out of the water and lay on the edge of the swimming pool, but her expression was a little wrong, and her eyes were fixed on a position. And the one looking at her was a cat. A cat squatting not far away. It had been half an hour, and the cat had not moved at all, but even in the water, you could feel its gaze. Many people may not feel anything when being looked at by a cat, but what if this cat gives you a very smart feeling? It's like someone is staring at you every day. And you don't know what the other person is thinking. Now Sakai Otoha has this feeling. At first, she thought it was quite interesting. After all, a pure black cat is rare, and this cat is very smart. But after watching it a few times, she always felt a little creepy. Swim first, then go to the gym, then eat something, and then go swimming after a rest. Originally, after a period of training, she would not be too tired to complete the whole process by herself, but today it was like adding a weight to her body, and the huge pressure almost made her breathless. Sakai Otoha realized that if she continued like this, she would collapse sooner or later, and quickly found Lin Zion, who was slacking off on the side, and said, "Let your cat go back quickly. If you continue like this, I will go crazy sooner or later." "What's the matter?" Lin Zion put down the handle in his hand and looked at her curiously. It was just a cat, but she reacted so much. Lin Zion certainly couldn't understand Sakai Otoha's feelings. After all, even if Ziobai stared at him every day, he didn't feel strange. After Sakai Otoha finished speaking, Lin Zion smiled and called Ziobai over. "This problem is easy to solve." Lin Zion picked up Ziobai and put her in front of Sakai Otoha, saying, "You don't have to watch her all the time. Wait until she is lazy before staring at her." Lin Zion said it directly. This is the effect he wants. Compared with himself, Ziobai is more intimidating to some people. After hearing what Chiu said, Sakai Otoha finally understood his hard work, but relatively speaking, she could only accept it. After all, it was her own choice. After Sakai Otoha left, Lin Zion picked up the controller again, but the picture on the screen was no longer the previous one, but another one. This is the 5th game. He didn't expect Sakai Otoha to buy so many games. Although most of them are those dead house games, they are still quite exciting to play. After all, he is following the opposite main line. "I'm back." Lin Zion came back very early today, compared to the past. After all, there is already Ziobai over there, and he came back first after playing enough games. It's only 10 minutes away from Sakai Otoha's house, so Ziobai knows how to get back. "Hey! Why did Qingtian come back so early today?" Michiko, wearing an apron, came out of the kitchen with a look of disbelief on her face, obviously a little surprised at Lin Zion's return home time. "My work has been taken over by others, so I came back early if I have nothing to do." Lin Zion, who had played games all afternoon, seemed a little bored, and his tone of voice was a little decadent. How could he not be decadent? It was okay at first, but he got bored after playing a few more games, and the plots were all similar. He could play through them with his eyes closed, and there was no fun at all. And some games were deliberately disgusting, with some NTR plots, and he almost smashed the controller when he played them. Lin Zion didn't understand, why do so many people in Japan like NTR plots? Is this a strange custom for them? Lin Zion himself didn't think anything of it. Anyway, he was almost like this every day, but Michiko heard it had another meaning. "Why does Qingtian look like this? Fired, or what's wrong?" Lin Zion asked when he saw Michiko standing there in a strange way. "Oh," Michiko shuddered as if she was suddenly awakened, and her eyes changed when she looked at Lin Zion, but she didn't seem to want him to see it, and asked evasively, "Has Qingtian eaten?" Lin Zion looked up and said, "No, it's still early." But before he could finish, Michiko hurried back to the kitchen, shouting, "By the way, my dishes." Lin Zion just smiled and didn't say much. Reina rarely did not do her homework today, but played with her mobile phone on the sofa. She didn't know who she was chatting with, and she didn't even notice Lin Zion coming back until he walked into the hall. "Why did you come back so early today, Ani-chan?" Reina looked at him with surprise. "Why, don't you welcome me?" Lin Zion laughed when he saw her like this. "Ani-chan, you've worked hard today." Reina ran over without even wearing slippers, pulling his clothes and acting coquettishly. "Speak nicely, what are you doing?" Lin Zion asked curiously. "Let me guess, what do you need my help with?" No. Lingnei glanced at Lin Zion's clothes without leaving any trace, and then said, "Where is the gift that Ani-chan promised me?" "Gift? What gift?" Lin Zion was confused. He couldn't remember when he promised to give her a gift. "That's it." Lingnei raised her hand and pointed to one side. Lin Zion looked in the direction she pointed, and when he saw the door of the basement, he remembered that it really happened, but he certainly couldn't say that. I didn't say that at the beginning. This can only be given when the time is right. Now is not the time. Lin Zion can come up with excuses easily. And it was definitely said at the beginning. The explanation of this right time is completely in his hands. He can do it whenever he wants, anyway, not now. This is as rogue as those clauses that the final right of interpretation belongs to XXX. If you don't accept it, you will not be allowed to use it. If there is a problem, let others say it. But I haven't seen you go in for a long time, Lingnei questioned. Did you really do it, Ani-chan? Yes, I really did. Her words made Lin Zion very embarrassed. Why did you expose someone's past when you didn't agree with her? You were not like this before. Yes, I really did. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My Retirement Life in Neon. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 253. But why did she think I was going to give her a gift today? Lin Zion thought about it and found that he seemed to have hinted that he would reward her after she got a good grade in the exam. But didn't we agree to take her out to play? Why did she think it was a gift? It doesn't matter if she doesn't remember, it's not a problem for Lin Zion. Thinking of this, Lin Zion changed his words and pretended to be very mysterious and said, I didn't expect Lingnei to know that I prepared a gift for you, but guess what gift I prepared? Lin Zion learned this trick from a stupid netizen. The source of this trick is a sad story. Because every time there are some festivals, he has to prepare gifts for his girlfriend, but there are so many messy festivals in a year. And the gift requires both romance and sincerity, and it must meet the girlfriend's aesthetics. If you think about them one by one, your brain cells will die. If an ordinary man might look up a certain treasure or ask for help in the circle of friends, but the hero of this story is very smart, he thought of a way. That is to let his girlfriend think. Every time when it was almost time, he would ask his girlfriend to guess what gift he would give. He would wait for his girlfriend to say 3 to 5 items, and then buy according to what she said. Usually the first one was what she wanted the most. After his girlfriend finished talking, he would tell her to keep it a secret and let her wait until that day to see for herself. This method was simply perfect and perfectly met the requirements. The man didn't have to think about it, and the woman was satisfied. Then the couple broke up in less than half a year. It wasn't because the gift didn't meet the woman's requirements, nor was it because the woman saw through this method and felt that the man was not sincere, but because the man had no money. Because the gifts his girlfriend guessed would cost him several months' salary, such as bags, clothes, and the like. It was okay at first, but he couldn't stand it after a few more times. Then he complained bitterly on the internet and successfully changed his job to become a single dog. Lin Zion laughed when he saw it at the time. How could there be such a person? If he had a little brain, he wouldn't do this. But now he has no problem using it for emergency, because he doesn't have the most important problem of having no money. What is it? Lingnei looked at Lin Zion, her face full of curiosity and expectation. Guess. Food. Guess again. Clothes. No. Workbook. No. Lin Zion shook his head. He really couldn't understand why Rena was talking about this. Clothes are still easy to talk about, but how come even workbooks are out? How can you tell him to give this? Ani-chan, tell me first. Rena shook his arm. Keep it a secret for now, you'll know when the time comes. Lin Zion himself didn't know what to give, so how could he say it? Let's fool Rena first, and think about it later. I wanted to be a little clever. I didn't expect that the sand sculpture netizen's method was unreliable. Now that I'm in trouble, I still have to think about what gift to give her. Lin Zion really wants to complain now, but when he sees Rena's expectant look, he can't say anything. Forget it, think about it carefully. It's time to eat. What are you doing? Michiko came out of the kitchen and shouted while taking off her apron. I'm coming, Reina shouted and left him to run inside. Michiko, who had just come out, saw Reina's excitement and shouted, slow down, no one is competing with you. But Reina had already run into the kitchen before she finished speaking. Seeing Lin Zion looking over here, Michiko smiled bitterly and said, come over to eat, Kingtian-kun, you've worked hard today. For some reason, the same words sounded completely different when spoken by Reina and Michiko. Michiko made Lin Zion feel very comfortable. But this feeling was fleeting, and Lin Zion returned the favor and said to her in a gentle tone, you've worked hard too, let's eat first. Okay, Michiko's expression froze for a moment, and then she smiled more brightly. Lin Zion never liked polite words, and his current ability made him prefer to be straightforward. After all, it is difficult for this world to limit him, and there is no need to be like in his previous life. He is obviously a top figure, but he still lives cautiously, for fear that a master will come out to hit him. To be honest, Michiko usually doesn't cook too many dishes when Lin Zion is not at home for dinner, and the dishes are extremely simple. One is that the two of them can't eat too much. Another is that they have long been accustomed to this. Lin Zion has talked about them before, but they are still the same, under the pretext of controlling their food intake and girls can't get fat. After that, Xiu never talked about them again. Anyway, he doesn't care, as long as they like it. So his bowl of rice is more than the two of them combined. Mom, Ani I-chan said she wants to give me a gift. Reina can't wait to share this news with Michiko. Michiko, who just picked up the bowl and chopsticks, was stunned for a moment, and then looked at Lin Zion inquiringly, what's wrong? It's okay, Reina did well in the exam this time, and I promised her a reward before. Lin Zion smiled and nodded to confirm this matter. Michiko didn't say anything else, but frowned slightly, but soon calmed down. Lin Zion, sitting in front of the computer, looked at the blank document in front of him. I had thought that since there had been no news for so many days, I was free today, so I wanted to write something to comfort the readers. But when I sat in front of the computer, my mind was empty, and I didn't feel like doing anything. What should I write? How about playing a game? Lin Zion, who was still slacking off, was interrupted by a knock on the door. He subconsciously looked at the door, and saw Michiko standing there, with her hand still knocking on the door. Come in. Lin Zion nodded to her to let her in, and then asked, what's the matter? What's the matter? The door was not locked, not even closed, just open, but Michiko seemed to be locked outside, until he nodded and came in. Didn't disturb Kingtian-kun's work, Michiko's gentle voice sounded. The reason she did this was because she was afraid that she would disturb Lin Zion's work. After all, there were more than 1 or 2 previous lessons. It's okay, I'm just thinking about it, and I haven't started yet. Lin Zion completely forgot that he was just in a daze just now, but it was a pity that Michiko didn't see through his true face. Michiko came in and handed over 2 things. Lin Zion was a little surprised when he saw what she handed over. He didn't take it immediately, but looked up at her. This is the expenditure for this month. I wrote it down. Michiko took the 2 things separately and said with a small notebook. My Retirement Life in Neon. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 254. What about this? Lin Zion pointed at the thing in her other hand and said, the remaining money. Yes, Michiko nodded, and handed it over again. Kingtian-kun, take a look. Okay, Lin Zion did not refuse this time, but took it over and looked through it carefully. Originally, with his reading speed, even if he really read it carefully, he would just flip through it casually, but this time he read every page slowly. And Michiko, standing aside, did not seem impatient, just looked at Lin Zion, No one knew what she was thinking? Okay, no problem. Lin Ziyan turned to the last page, closed the small book and put it aside, looked up at Michiko, handed over the remaining money and said, "This is yours." "No need," Michiko pushed away the money he handed over. "It's enough for King Tian-kun to let us live here, and you have helped Reina so much. Take it, we agreed at the beginning. I'm not letting you live here for free. You are responsible for the cleaning and cooking here. Since it's a job, you have to get paid." Lin Ziyan didn't give her time to talk nonsense, and interrupted her directly. "But there are still more than 200,000 yen. Michiko was a little anxious, and she didn't accept the reward without doing anything. In her own impression, she didn't do anything, just some housework, which was enough to cover the meal money. Now taking so much money at once would only make her feel uneasy. At the beginning, Lin Ziyan left her 400,000 yen, and after a month, there were more than 200,000 yen left, which was about 10,000 yuan. Don't think it's a lot. This is Tokyo. Considering the prices here, a month's food, drink, entertainment, water, electricity, gas, firewood, rice, oil, and salt is not a simple number. It's normal to want to live a little better. I don't need this little money. Don't let me say it again." Lin Ziyan's attitude became tough. To be honest, Lin Ziyan hates this kind of thing. It was originally agreed that the remaining money would be regarded as wages. It's your ability to save so much, and the whole house is well managed. It's much more comfortable than when he was alone. He doesn't have to take care of anything. Just wait for meals every day. Lin Ziyan still recognizes Michiko's work ability, and this money is really not a lot of money for him. Michiko was a little at a loss for a while, and she didn't dare to say no. "Take it. Since you have worked hard, how can you not get paid? I'm not one of those capitalists who preach blessings." Lin Ziyan stuffed the money into Michiko's hand, and his tone became gentle again. Okay. Michiko hesitated for a moment and accepted the money. After all, she still had to save some money for Reina. "That's right, you also need money." Lin Ziyan stood up and said after Michiko accepted it, "Come with me first, there are some things to be arranged first." Okay. Michiko followed him out after hearing his words. "Is there anything about King Tian-kun?" Michiko seemed a little nervous and asked behind him. "Let's talk about it first, so that you won't be like this in the future." "What? 200,000 yen? Huh? What did King Tian-kun say?" Michiko thought she had heard it wrong, and her steps that were originally following Lin Ziyan slowed down. Then Lin Ziyan took her to the bedroom. "What is King Tian-kun going to do?" Michiko's voice trembled after entering the room, and her hands holding the money twisted uneasily. But Lin Ziyan ignored her, but sat on the edge of the bed and flipped through the bedside table. Found it. Lin Ziyan took out a bank card from the drawer, then found a pen and paper and wrote down a string of numbers. Michiko, who was standing on the side, looked at Lin Ziyan's strange behavior and gradually showed a puzzled expression on her face. "Here, take this." Lin Ziyan handed the thing to Michiko. "There should be about 1 million in it, you can deduct it yourself when the time comes, 200,000 yen at a time." "What do you mean, Aota-kun?" Michiko not only did not take the thing he handed over, but took 2 steps back. "What? Not enough?" Lin Ziyan looked at Michiko with interest, but his eyes were very strange. Michiko did not speak, just looked at him. The atmosphere became solemn for a while. "How about adding some?" Lin Ziyan smiled, as if he didn't care about Michiko's attitude at all, and looked like he was sure of it. "Please don't talk about this." This time it was Michiko's turn to be firm. It was rare for her to speak in this tone, but Lin Ziyan was unmoved and continued, "Tell me how much you want. As long as it's not too outrageous, I can accept it. It seems that King Tian-kun is too tired today. I'll leave first if there's nothing else." Michiko sighed and turned to leave the room. But at this moment, there was a sudden laugh behind her. Michiko looked back and saw Lin Ziyan laughing. The kind of unscrupulous. Seeing Michiko looking at a fool, Lin Ziyan explained, I haven't seen you like this for a long time. Michiko shook her head and turned to leave. Playing is playing, but work still needs to be done. Seeing Michiko like this, Lin Ziyan hurriedly called her. Hey! Don't leave. We haven't agreed on the salary yet. Salary? Michiko turned and looked at him and asked. Yes, aren't you dissatisfied with a monthly salary of 200,000 yen? Lin Ziyan had no intention of hiding the smile on his face. Michiko thought about what had just happened and finally understood why he laughed like that. No, 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 200,000 yen is too much for me. To be honest, a monthly salary of 200,000 yen is indeed high for her. She used to work 2 jobs and do some part-time jobs at night, a total of 3 jobs, and the monthly salary did not add up to 200,000 yen. Although it is a problem with these jobs, there is nothing she can do about it. She brought Reina out before she finished high school. Not to mention a diploma, she doesn't even have a residence permit. So only these jobs don't care about these details, but the boss will definitely lower the salary, and even the contract is not signed, just verbal. This is why she was fired directly, but she couldn't do anything about it. With this little money, it's hard to live in Tokyo, let alone survive. If it weren't for Lin Ziyan's arrival, she might not have been able to hold on. Then what else are you dissatisfied with? Lin Ziyan laughed when he saw her like this. This amount is not given randomly by Lin Ziyan. You should know that the average monthly salary of Japanese people is about 400,000 yuan now. It is normal for Lin Ziyan to offer 200,000 yuan. After all, Michiko does not have much to do, just helping him to manage the family. Lin Ziyan did not say anything about her making clothes, which means that he tacitly accepted her income, and also provided food and accommodation. So all arrangements made by Lin Ziyan are very reasonable. Happy New Year everyone! My Retirement Life in Neon. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 255. Rules are his basic principle for doing things. He would neither give Michiko a large sum of money for no reason nor let her work for nothing. You get paid as much as you work, and reasonable operation within the rules is the premise of stability. Seeing that Michiko agreed, he did not say anything more, but handed the bank card again and said, you can deduct the living expenses and wages from it yourself, and tell me when you are done. This bank card was opened when he first came here, and there is still a little money in it, but he has not used this card since he settled down. The reason is very simple, because he knows that whatever he buys with this card will eventually be sent to his father. He is now using the one that Yukino Takemi gave him. He doesn't know how much money there is, anyway, he has a lot of money with Yukino Takemi. Yes, Michiko took the bank card, but her expression was still a little hesitant, as if she wanted to say something but stopped. Seeing her expression, Lin Ziyan asked, what? Is there anything else? Michiko hesitated for a moment, and finally looked at him and asked, what's wrong with Qingtian today? What's wrong? Lin Ziyan was confused. What kind of question is this? Is he trying to trick him? Work. Qingtian said it when he came back. Michiko looked timid, as if she was afraid of making him unhappy. Oh, you're talking about this? Lin Ziyan finally understood after hearing this. Of course, Michiko, who had been oppressed by capitalists for many years, would misunderstand something when she heard his unintentional words. This topic can be quite sensitive for Michiko. After all, she has experienced that feeling and was fired without any warning, just a word from the boss. Michiko didn't know what Lin Ziyan's source of income was, so of course she would have such worries. It's not that she was afraid that Lin Ziyan had no money, but that she was afraid that he couldn't bear this kind of grievance, so she came to comfort him. It's just. Is there any problem with someone else taking over? Lin Ziyan thought about it and still wanted to explain a little to avoid further misunderstanding. You don't know what I do. Lin Ziyan shook his head, denied Michiko's statement, and asked back, it takes me 2 or 3 months to complete a project. If I have to watch the whole process, how can I live? But before Michiko could speak, he took the lead and said, if you don't want to be too tired, some unimportant things can be handed over to the people below, and you can make detailed plans yourself. Michiko understood what Xiu said and smiled awkwardly. It turned out that she misunderstood Qingtian's meaning, but why did Qingtian look so world-weary at that time? Michiko still couldn't figure it out a little bit, but she didn't dare to say anything more. After all, she had made a joke. After Michiko left, Lin Ziyan fell on the bed, took out his mobile phone and started looking for sand sculpture news. As for typing, I'm so tired today, I'll talk about it when I have time. Why did you take so long to come back this time? Lin Ziyan, who was lying on the bed, suddenly spoke up, but there was no one in the room except him, not even Xiaobai. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a wave in the void, and a solid figure appeared beside the bed, looking at him respectfully. Master. Shigeki Chihiro seemed a little strange. She came back when Michiko was still there, but Lin Ziyan didn't see her reaction after Michiko left, so he asked this question. What happened? How could it make you like this? To be honest, Lin Ziyan was a little curious. Chihiro had been with him for so long and had always been pure and unselfish. Except for Gongzong Liwi, no one could make her react. I found a place. Chihiro's words did not have any emotional color, not because Chihiro had no emotions, but because she was completely made of energy, without organs such as vocal cords, and speaking was just simulated by air vibration. This little trick was taught to her by Xiu when he created her, but she has not been able to use it after so long. So whenever there is emotion, Qingxun prefers to transmit directly through energy. The voice cannot be heard, but Lin Ziyan can feel the emotions she exudes. Is it the one at the beginning? Not sure. Did you do it? No. It seems to be really troublesome. Lin Ziyan's lazy voice sounded. What are you going to do? Lin Ziyan knew that Qingxun did not do it for 2 reasons. Either there are masters sitting there, and she is not sure to kill them all. Or, she can't judge whether those people can be eaten. The latter one may be more likely, otherwise she would not stay so long. Qingxun doesn't know. Lin Ziyan realized that Qingxun is now wondering what to do, so she is like this. Then tell me what those people did. Please let the master see it for himself. Qingxun closed her eyes and concentrated, peeled a small ball of light from her hand, and then floated straight towards Lin Ziyan. Lin Ziyan did not have too many doubts and reached out to catch the ball of light. After all, it was difficult to ask Qingxun to describe a scene, so it was better to be more direct this way. After taking the light ball, he also closed his eyes, as if he was sleeping, but his eyebrows were twitching from time to time, as if he had seen something strange. After a long time, Lin Ziyan woke up quietly. He took a rough look at Qingxun's memories of the past few days, which was indeed a bit beyond his expectation. He didn't expect Qingxun to go to that kind of place. You did the right thing, you really can't take action, otherwise you will be in big trouble. Lin Ziyan cast an appreciative look at Qingxun. To Qingxun, this sentence was Lin Ziyan's recognition of her, but before she could be happy, Lin Ziyan's next words came out. But how did you end up in a place like that? Are you not afraid of others getting rid of you? Lin Ziyan's tone was calm when he said this, and Qingxun was not sure what he meant, so he had to carefully test, because Qingxun felt something was attracting to that place. But before she finished speaking, Lin Ziyan said angrily, aren't you talking nonsense? Of course you are attracted to people who are worshipping Shikigami, and you still want to go over and eat that Shikigami, right? After all, that's nothing compared to people are much more delicious. Qingxun doesn't dare anymore. Kyungsun said nervously with a horrified look on his face. But when Lin Zian saw Kyungsun like this, he looked indifferent. He turned over his phone and said, "Since you have entered this world, many rules that apply to humans cannot restrict you, but you must be self-aware." Lin Zian suddenly stopped as he spoke, put down his phone and looked up into Kyungsun's eyes. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My Retirement Life in Neon. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 256. It is true that refining resources should be put first, but you need to have the corresponding strength to get it. Other people's century-old shikigami is indeed very fragrant, and it can replace hundreds of inferior souls for you. But why didn't you think about whether you can eat it? If it weren't for your special physique, ordinary practitioners would not notice you, and you would probably have been eaten by others now. Why are you still thinking about these things here?" Suddenly scolded by Lin Zian, Kyungsun's body kept shaking and twisting, and finally turned back to its original form. Lin Zian didn't expect her to be so bold. Because she was afraid of any problems nearby, Kyungsun deliberately ran a little further this time, but she was attracted by a force before she started working. When Lin Zian created her, it was largely a coincidence, so Lin Zian didn't prepare this part of knowledge for her. Kyungsun, like Takaishi Mai, was a latecomer and didn't understand the cruelty of the cultivation world at all. When she saw something attractive, she ran over to join in the fun. If others really had a plan, she wouldn't be able to come back. That's right, this time Chihiro actually ran to someone else's shrine. Fortunately, the people in this shrine are not very good, and because she is a spirit, there is no other impurities on her body, otherwise she would have been detected by the shrine's own protective spell. With her half-baked knowledge, it's okay to deal with ordinary people, but against those professional yin-yang masters in the shrine? When she was discovered, it was equivalent to giving up. Recalling the scenes he just saw, Lin Zian couldn't help but frown slightly, and muttered, "It's just that the ritual and refining method of this shrine doesn't seem to be very clean. The main shikigami of general shrines are almost those souls. This has a wide source, a large number, and a simple training method with a high upper limit. As long as you are willing to train it, it will not be too bad. There are also some more niche ones, such as artifacts, heaven and earth spirits, ghosts, etc. For example, Bingxian is a ghost, and as for the sword called Begwiven that he encountered at the beginning, it does not belong to the artifact category, but only belongs to a way of refining souls. There are many kinds of soul refining, human-based, animal-based, just like what I said above, they are all different ways of refining, and they all follow the line of wandering souls /U003E resentful spirits /U003E evil ghosts. But the others are different, there are all kinds of strange things, even Lin Zian dare not say that he knows them all. This is just the situation in Neon, which is much simpler than in China. This world is still very dangerous, especially for a rookie like Kyungsun. It is precisely because of this that he wants to train Gao Shijia to stand in front of him. Forget it this time, you should be thankful that nothing unexpected happened. Kyungsun dared to retransform after hearing Lin Zian's words, standing aside with his head down, not knowing what he was thinking. Looking at Kyungsun's appearance, Lin Zian didn't know what he thought of, and sighed and said, "Alas, it's also my fault that I didn't remind you that places where energy explodes may not be good. Where in this world are there so many geniuses and treasures waiting for you? Be more sober in the future, don't join in the fun if you don't have the strength." "Yes," Kyungsun replied with lowered eyebrows and eyes. But Lin Zian could hear the uneasiness in her voice. "Well, if you are unhappy, go and trouble them when you have the strength. They are not good people anyway." Lin Zian took a special look at her before continuing, "It's just better to be honest now." "Don't worry, Master. Chihiro knows what to do. Even though he knew that there was something wrong with the shrine, Lin Zion didn't care. This is not because he didn't have the ability, but because he had just checked on the internet. This thing has been officially registered and is one of the shrines recognized by the Japanese government. It is impossible to say that the Japanese government is not aware of the problem of this shrine. Lin Zion has seen the official black-clad men. They are responsible for these things and must have information about the shrine. It's just that the country needs to use the power of these people, so it just turns a blind eye. It's obvious that they sacrificed their own family for the sake of everyone, but whether it is worth it is not up to Lin Zion. At least Neon didn't get into chaos on the surface. There is no benefit in provoking them, and most of the shrines in Neon are the same, so he can't care so much. As long as it doesn't offend him, it has nothing to do with him. Neon has its own rules. Come here. I'm free. I'll talk to you about cultivation. Lin Zion rarely became serious. After all, Chihiro is different from Mai Takaishi. She is much more reliable and her strength is improving quickly. As for sequelae, she doesn't even have a physical body anymore, so why is she afraid of sequelae? Energy is energy everywhere. As long as you eat it, it's yours. Chihiro turned into her original form and fell into Lin Zion's hands. Then Lin Zion sat cross-legged on the bed with his hands clasped at his dantian. His posture was leisurely and the mixed breath became long. These changes were completed almost instantly, and he seemed to be asleep. There are many ways to say this. Buddhism calls it meditation, Taoism calls it fetal breathing, and foreign countries call it meditation. In fact, they are all the same. It's just a way to calm the body and mind. Lin Zion just wanted to communicate with Chihiro better at this time. Some things can't be said. After a while, the light ball in Lin Zion's hand slowly dissipated into the air, and he didn't pay much attention to it. Instead, he stood up and walked out. I have taught her everything I can. Whether she can understand it depends on herself. It's just that I seem to have neglected cultivation during this period. In this world without external and internal troubles, he has become more and more lazy. I don't know if this can be considered as integrating into this world. Now it seems that he really hasn't done anything. Is this an empty life? Lin Zion thought about it and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he remembered the teachings of his old father again. What kind of chicken soup should be achieved in life, such as shining and heating up the society? When he was at home, he was criticized for being a salted fish all day long and doing nothing. But now it seems that being a salted fish is the life he wants. The more Lin Zion thought about it, the stronger his smile became. In the end, he simply laughed out loud, but he used a little ability to limit the laughter around him, otherwise Oda mother and daughter would definitely think he was crazy. He has seen too many people of all kinds. When he was successful in cultivation, he took the initiative to enter the world and became all kinds of people in order to cultivate his mind. The final conclusion is that everyone has his own way of life. When you don't understand this way of life, please don't comment too much. After all, the world is not made up of your own preferences. Some people are disgusted by those unambitious lazy people, but do they really understand the life of lazy people? My Retirement Life in Neon. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 257. Bang bang bang, a knock on the door woke up Lin Zion in bed. Who is it? A lazy voice sounded, and Lin Zion turned over to the other side, waking up Ziobai who was sleeping on the quilt, speaking intermittently. Stop sleeping and open the door. Meow. Ziobai, who was curled up on the quilt, stood up and yawned after being woken up by him, and then reluctantly ran to open the door. Ani-chan, feeling a twist on the doorknob, Reina pulled the door open the moment the lock jumped open. It's just that it's not Lin Zion who's waiting for her, but Ziobai. Meow, Ziobai screamed and ran out. If Lin Zion hadn't told him not to hurt anyone before, Lene would have a few more scratches on her hands now. Reina was also startled, and a dark figure came out as soon as she opened the door. If it was night, she would probably be even more exaggerated. As soon as Lene walked in and saw Linzian still sleeping on the bed, her anger meter instantly filled up. However, as soon as she walked over and saw Linzian's face, she forgot about everything. Even her steps became much lighter, as if she was afraid of disturbing him. Same. She didn't know what she thought of, but a sly smile appeared on Lene's face, but when she was about to take out her phone, Linzian suddenly opened her eyes and looked at her. She was so frightened that she trembled and took 2 steps back. Just a moment later, Linzian's eyes were half open and half closed, as if he hadn't woken up yet, and it was as if the look in his eyes had never appeared before. Linzian's unique lazy voice sounded, "It's not time to get up yet, what does Lina want to do?" Reina only reacted when she heard this. Thinking that she had been frightened twice just now, she felt a little unwilling, but she couldn't say anything, so she could only pretend to say, "Don't you have to go to work today, Ani-chan?" Going to work, Linzian, who had closed his eyes, opened his eyes again, looked at Lene and said with a smile, "Normally you would be reluctant to let me go, what happened today?" After being found out, Reina looked around and talked about him, saying irrelevant words and ran out. "It's nothing. Ziobai ran out just now. I'll go take a look." After Lene went out, Linzian closed his eyes again and said, "Didn't I tell you not to touch them too? Don't you want me to say it a third time?" When Linzian said this, it was obviously the same as before, but it sounded extremely chilly to Kingxun, and his spiritual body was shaken by these words. For a moment, Kingxun actually forgot to answer his words. It wasn't until Kingxun realized it after a while that she hurriedly explained, she just wanted to insult the master. Kingxun spoke with intense emotion, as if she was aggrieved. "Isn't it just to take a photo, why is it so serious?" Linzian raised his head and glanced at Kingxun, and said helplessly. "No." Kingxun suddenly became hardened, as if he was risking his life to remonstrate, "The master's sleeping state cannot be seen by others. Even if there is a next time, I will do it. Even if the master wants to get rid of Kingxun, Kingxun will never allow anyone to insult the master." Linzian was speechless for a moment. Did something go wrong when Kingxun was making it? Although it is said that it is to protect oneself, who did you learn from the formation of being ready to kill someone at every turn? I never taught her this. Huh. But I seem to be about the same. Okay, I know you are kind-hearted." Linzian got up, sat on the edge of the bed and looked at Kingxun, and said, "But can you be more flexible? You have no brains, so don't be stubborn. If you don't want her to do this, you can get rid of her. Why would you kill her as soon as you take action?" Master taught me a lesson. Kingxun didn't argue, he just agreed. Seeing her like this, Linzian felt that she wanted to avenge her privately more. Forget it, what was a great morning was ruined by you." Linzian didn't want to say anything more and waved Kingxun away. As Kingxun gradually disappeared into the air, Linzian stood up and walked out of the room. "Hey! Our class has swimming lessons today." Yes. I'm looking forward to it. Have you guys lost weight properly? Don't let your belly bulge out when the time comes." "Of course. I've lost weight well. I wonder what the boys in our class are like." "You little nympho. What? Don't you want to see it?" Linzian sat in his seat, listening to the girls in the class discussing the afternoon swimming class. This is indeed a rare and interesting course for Neon people. Especially for the students of this school. Because there is only one swimming pool in the school, swimming lessons are taken by boys and girls together. However, the intensity of the discussion on the boys' side was no worse than that on the girls' side, but they were quite united in discussing Jinzi Tomi's figure. You can see Tsuzi Tomi-san's figure this afternoon. Super exciting. Jinzi-san is wet. You can't see it from other classes. Yes, I'm so lucky to be in this class. I don't know what Jinzi Tomi's figure is like. Mixed blood. Do you always see those foreign women? Never seen it? Isn't there a German in our class? Just ask him and you will know. Foreign women, I know a little bit about them. How much inventory do you have on the network disk? The topic became more and more off topic, but those people became more and more excited. Later, Lin Zian saw that they were all chatting on their phones, and they laughed strangely from time to time. Of course, he was the only exception. Lin Zian expressed his understanding for these young people with high hormone secretion, but he didn't consider the occasion. Didn't he see that Tsuji Tomi's face turned black? Now saying this is equivalent to saying in front of Tsuji Tomi that she has an airport at a young age. Lin Zian could only mourn for the young people in the class. Suddenly, Lin Zian felt that he was being watched, but he ignored it directly. There were only two people in the class who would look at him, one was Tsuji Tomi, who was hostile to him for some reason, and the other was the confused Hosokawa Ryo. But Jiu didn't want to have too much interaction with her, because he could see that Hosokawa Ryo was not a simple person and often kept things from him. But the amazing thing was that Lin Zian didn't feel any scheming in her. This was the most terrifying thing. Maybe because he was being stared at for too long, Lin Zian looked up and made eye contact with her, but she avoided him after a brief eye contact and lowered her head again. Even if Lin Zian had supernatural powers, he couldn't guess what she was trying to do. Based on the principle of not digging holes, he simply ignored the matter and turned around to continue his own business. My Retirement Life in Neon. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 258. When the bell rang, the already restless students started to whisper to each other. The teacher on the stage was not surprised to see the situation. He just said, "Get out of class, dismissed," and left the classroom. This sentence was like a signal. The whole class rushed around, gathered in groups of 3 or 2, and each took out their lunch boxes. Some people also walked out of the classroom together. For a while, the classroom was full of laughter and joy. At this time, Lin Zian, who had been slacking off, came back to his senses and murmured, "Get out of class is dismissed, it's lunch time again." Lin Zian glanced at the people in the class and was about to get up when he saw Hosokawa Ryo looking at him with a lunch box. As if he had noticed her next move, Lin Zian got up and walked out of the classroom first, leaving Hosokawa Ryo standing there blankly with her lunch box. Her lips moved as if she was saying something, but no sound came out, and her eyes became empty as if they had lost focus. Lin Zian was unaware of what was happening behind him. He met Yotsuki Hideki at the stairs as usual and then went to the school cafeteria. Yotsuki Hideki suddenly asked while walking on the road, "Hey. Your class has a swimming class today, right?" "Yeah, the last class in the afternoon," Lin Zian answered casually. Seeing him like this, Yotsuki Hideki quickly said, "Aren't you looking forward to it at all? I envy you guys." "Looking forward to it? Aren't they just in class? What's there to look forward to?" Lin Zian looked at him with contempt, "and it's not like your class doesn't have it, it's just not today." "This is different." Yotsuki Hideki's reaction was extraordinary. "Swimming class is for both boys and girls. Other sports classes are also for both boys and girls, all in school, at the same time, but they are separated because boys and girls need to practice differently." "What you said seems to make sense, but why do I feel something is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong, we're at the cafeteria. I heard that the teacher of swimming class is a woman." "Yes, I heard from class that it's a female teacher." "So what? Tsuji Tomi is the best in the world." "Yes. Tsuji Tomi is the best in the world." Lin Zian was walking on the way to the swimming pool, listening to those animals saying some weird slogans. If there weren't so few people on the road, he would have wanted to wait until they finished before going. It's so embarrassing. Are people in Japan so immature? It's just. After Lin Zion looked up, he murmured, "This happens too often. Is there something wrong?" Looking at the group of girls walking in front, Hosokawa Ryo is not conspicuous at all. If you don't know her, you may not notice her. Hosokawa Ryo is also a little transparent in the class, but compared with Lin Zion's initiative, she became passive. People in the class can't say that they obviously reject her, but they won't talk to her or get close to her. Only the class monitor Tsuji Tomi sometimes goes over to care, and then a group of silly classmates next to her look like Tsuji Tomi is really kind. But in Lin Zion's eyes, it's more like Tsuji Tomi is looking for a supporting role. It can be said that after Lin Zion lost contact with her, she became autistic in the class, and would only hold her mobile phone or read novels after class. It's not pitiful, anyway. Lin Zion himself enjoys the feeling of not having to communicate with silly classmates. He never needs to show himself by gathering together. Lin Zion shook his head to drive away the distracting thoughts and returned to his indifferent look. The school's swimming pool is not very big, but it has everything it should have, and it is no worse than the professional swimming pools outside. It is usually quite lively here. After all, this is the main venue of the swimming club, and the swimming club is one of the top 3 clubs in the school, so there are quite a lot of people coming here every day after school. But most of them are not from the swimming club, and there are more people coming to watch others swim. Because the swimming club is famous for its handsome men and beautiful women. In fact, in Lin Zion's opinion, people who exercise regularly have good figures, as long as they are not too ugly. The training of the swimming club shows this plus point, so it has this reputation. Don't think that only men come here. On the contrary, the proportion of girls is even higher, at least 60%. Because the top card of the swimming club is a famous school grass in the whole school, who once represented the school in the Neon High School League and won a 3rd place. At that time, he was only in the 1st grade, and his opponents were all in the 3rd grade, while he is now in the 2nd grade. Every day during training, many fans would come to cheer for him. Even though Shiu didn't care about these, he had heard about them from the gossip of the girls in the class. The locker room of the swimming pool was opposite the entrance, with the swimming pool in the middle. However, after entering the door, the male and female teams separated, and the 2 teams walked along the 2 sides of the swimming pool. Because the male and female locker rooms are separate. Without the constraints of girls, Lin Zion heard quite a few boys complain about why the locker rooms could not be together. The bursts of laughter from the boys from time to time attracted the girls on the other side to look over frequently. And Lin Zion watched the various changes on both sides silently, but whether it was the laughter of the boys or the whispers of the girls, when reflected on his face, he was expressionless, and even revealed a hint of indifference. The locker room is not just the one on the sports field, but also has 2 rows of 16 small cubicles. These cubicles are equipped with a set of shower equipment, which is generally used to clean the body after swimming, and of course, before entering. It is just that how many people can abide by this school rule. There are also several hair dryers fixed on the wall in the locker room. It can be said that the school has done everything it can, and it is worthy of such high tuition fees. It is not so troublesome for boys to change swimsuits. Just take off your clothes and change into a pair of swimming trunks. Those who are quick can change within 10 seconds, and then run out. Not just 1 or 2, almost all boys are like this, as if they are afraid that they will not see it if they go too late. Lin Zion couldn't help but smile when he saw them like this. They won't leave. They have seen everything they should see in one class. Why are they in a hurry now? And what's so good about the steel plate? Lin Zion felt that these people who were in a hurry to go out and break their dreams were quite pitiful. After all, not all mixed bloods are big-blooded. After everyone else had left, Lin Zion slowly took off his coat, changed into a set of short-sleeved shirts and shorts, and then walked out in a pair of slippers. Lin Zion had not planned to go into the water in the first place. He did not want to go crazy with that group of idiots. Once he got wet, he would have to take a shower again, which was too troublesome. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My Retirement Life in Neon. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 259. Lin Zion walked out like an old man shopping. He was quite surprised when he went out. He didn't see a bunch of boys gathered at the door of the female locker room, but gathered by the swimming pool. Hey! Isn't this Matsushita Haru? She actually came to teach swimming. Lin Zion smiled when he saw the teacher in sportswear. Yukino Takemi arranged her to be with Yukino Giame to protect her. Of course, she must have an identity. Is it difficult to arrange a teacher position in this school? He opened. Lin Zion had long guessed that Matsushita Haru's identity in the school was a teacher, but he didn't expect it to be a swimming teacher. Originally, he thought that Matsushita Haru should be arranged to be a teacher in junior high school, so that he would have enough excuses to contact Yukino Giame. But it makes sense to think that the swimming teacher teaches both sides, and Yukino Giame's swimming is inherently dangerous, so this arrangement is very reasonable. After all, we can't let too many people know that Yukino Giame is the only daughter of the school director, otherwise there will be a lot of trouble. It's not that no one knows that this school is sponsored by Yukino Takemi, but most of the people who know are at that level and know what to do. But this is also good for him. Since Matsushita Haru is the swimming teacher, he doesn't even need to find an excuse not to go into the water, and he doesn't even need to change his clothes next time. Lin Zion, as the last boy to come out, was of course noticed by Matsushita Haru, but she acted very normal and just waved him over. That classmate, come and gather. Lin Zion nodded to her and walked over. Of course, only the two of them knew what this nod meant, and to others it was just a very ordinary little gesture. As mentioned before, girls change swimsuits much slower, even Lin Zion's speed is faster than them, and now there are only boys in the team. What are you guys gathering in the women's locker room? After listening to Matsushita Haru's words to these people, Lin Zion realized that these people had just run to the door of the women's locker room to watch. Then he was driven out by Matsushita Haru. It's not to mention that even if Matsushita Haru doesn't have the identity of a teacher, he is still capable of disciplining them. You can tell from her figure. When she's not exerting any effort, she only looks a little better. With the cover of the sportswear, it's even invisible. But if she exerts a little effort, you can see the bulging muscles sticking to the sportswear. She has definitely practiced, but I don't know if she came from the military or those security companies. Lin Zion guessed that she was wearing a swimsuit, but he was not sure. After all, teachers don't have to go into the water. Most people living in Neon can swim. Because of the geographical location, they must learn it, so generally there are swimming lessons since elementary school, and most students can swim until now. For them, swimming lessons are for fun. The boys didn't seem to react much to Matsushita Haru's words. Although they were facing the swimming pool when they stood, most of the boys looked towards the women's locker room, and some were whispering. Lin Zion, who was standing at the back, watched all this. Soon the first girl came out in a swimsuit, and then a few came out together, and the boys made strange noises in a very appropriate way. But the girls didn't react at all, as if everything was normal, and some of them were even quite casual. In fact, you can't see anything after putting on a one-piece swimsuit, so it's not surprising that girls have this reaction. Listening to the boys commenting on the girls who came out one by one, to be honest, Lin Zion felt that these little brats were sick. What does it have to do with you what other people's figures are? The way they pointed fingers at others is really disgusting. Lin Zion has no interest in those girls, because he found that when he saw a girl wearing a swimsuit, he thought of Sakai Otoha. The fat that trembled when she walked left a deep impression on him, and even affected here. This should be the so-called PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Here. Here. Tsuji Tomi is out. Hurry up. Let me see. Lin Zion didn't expect that Tsuji Tomi's magic was so strong that she could mess up the NEET team with just one sentence. Lin Zion didn't look at Tsuji Tomi at the first time, but set his eyes on Matsushita Haru. But he didn't see what he wanted to see. Matsushita Haru was also looking over there. Then he turned his head to look at Tsuji Tomi. To be honest, although he could guess that she was a steel plate, he was still a little curious. There was no expectation. She looked the same as a boy in the school uniform jacket. Anyone with a little bit of rationality could see it. It was just that most of the students in the class were irrational and blinded by hope. And now was the time when their dreams were shattered. Sure enough, Lin Zion nodded with satisfaction at Tsuji Tomi's figure. He was not wrong. But he took a look and saw that the boys' expressions were more beautiful than those girls'. Disappointment, unwillingness, anger, disbelief. Interesting, Lin Zion muttered to himself as he looked at the boys' expressions. What should these poor children do when they go back? Seeing these silly classmates like this, Lin Zion was a little happy. It was more fun to watch silly netizens doing things than to watch them live. Hey! Who is that? Wow! Is there this person in our class? No, my goddess will lose. At once, most of the boys in the class had changed expressions, and even Lin Zion did not expect this change. What magical power made these people become like this? Lin Zion looked over curiously, and saw Hosokawa Ryo with both hands in front of her body, lowering her head and walking out of the locker room door. It's so big. The words of the people next to him attracted Lin Zion's attention. When he looked over again, most of the boys were staring at that side. Lin Zion thought of this, but it was too big, and it was a bit unfair compared to the others. Looking over there, let alone boys, even many girls stood aside and looked over, but Hosokawa Ryo stood at the door of the locker room and did not move. Others were paying attention to Hosokawa Ryo's figure, but Lin Zion's attention was not on this, and his brows gradually frowned. Something is wrong. Lin Zion's lips moved slightly a few times and said something that only he could hear. With a bad premonition in mind, Lin Zion suddenly looked up at Hosokawa Ryo, who happened to be looking over at the same time. After a brief eye contact, Lin Zion left the team and rushed towards her. Lin Zion's sudden action scared everyone, but another incident immediately diverted their attention. Hosokawa Ryo fell to the ground for some reason. Did anyone see it? No one saw it? I will update it slowly. My Retirement Life in Neon. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 260. In Lin Zion's eyes, the distance of more than 10 meters was almost as close as his eyes, but he still had reservations in front of so many people. But he came to Ryo Hosokawa's side only 2 or 3 seconds after she fell to the ground. The second person to come was Matsushita Haru. She had received emergency response training. Even if she couldn't keep up with Lin Zion, she could still react faster than the classmates around her. At this time, the students had not yet reacted, and both men and women looked frightened. How's it going? Matsushita Haru was slightly anxious as she spoke. Can she not be afraid knowing Ryo Hosokawa's identity? This is also someone she can't afford to offend. But she knew that as a teacher, she couldn't panic, otherwise things would be even more troublesome. Lin Zion reached out and picked up Ryo Hosokawa, gently brushed her hair away, and put the back of his hand against her forehead. Hot. I felt this way when I picked her up just now. Her body temperature was abnormal, and her expression seemed uncomfortable. Fever, lack of physical strength caused by not getting a good rest. Just take a rest and you'll be fine. These words were spoken when Chiu touched Hosokawa Ryo's forehead. Seeing that these students were showing signs of gathering, Shiu picked up Ryo Hosokawa and said to Haru Matsushita, "I will take Ryo Hosokawa to the health room." After saying that, he left without giving others any time to react. Shiu rushed out before the crowd could get close to him, and it was only then that the idiot classmates reacted. It was only at this time that Matsushita Haru's role was revealed. She stood up and shouted, "This female classmate has a fever and is exhausted. I will send her to the health room. You can continue the class." Seeing these students still dilly-dallying, Matsushita Haru suddenly shouted, "Did you hear that?" Only then did the students react and quickly return to their original positions, but most students were not thinking about it. Lin Zion speeded up after leaving the swimming pool. It was class time now and there was no one outside. It would be more troublesome to be seen while procrastinating. However, Ryo Hosokawa's hand feels really good, at least it won't hurt your hand, but it's a bit heavy, which is completely different from Rina's light and airy feeling. But Ryo Hosokawa in her arms seemed to be awake. Feeling the strength coming from his arms, Lin Zion was afraid that something would go wrong and could only say, "Hosokawa-san, please don't move. I will take you to the health room now." Originally, Lin Zion just said it casually, but unexpectedly it really had an effect. Ryo Hosokawa in his arms actually stopped moving. He glanced down, but Ryo Hosokawa still looked unconscious, as if the struggle just now didn't exist at all. Lin Zion didn't pay much attention. The most important thing now was to send the person to the health room. After all, he was just talking about fever. As for the real cause, he knew it, but he didn't know if he could tell it. Eyes that fill the sky. No matter where she hides, there will always be countless eyes looking at her, and these eyes will move according to her movements. There were still whispers in his ears. Hosokawa Ryo tried his best to hear what was being said clearly, but all he heard were meaningless words, but these meaningless words revealed jealousy, excitement, madness, lust, etc. waiting for emotions. These emotions were like a nail pierced into Hosokawa Ryo's head. Then she fell unconscious. Until there was a shaking, Hosokawa Ryo felt a warmth surrounding her, even hot, but she seemed to be restrained, as if something was dragging her limbs, and her whole body was sliding into the depths of darkness. Ryo Hosokawa stretched her arms and legs as hard as she could, trying to break the darkness in front of her eyes and break free from the restraints. But at this moment, the darkness suddenly peeled off like broken egg shells, and a pair of hands with white light caught her sliding towards the abyss, but the dazzling light made it difficult for her to see behind the hands. Then there was a sentence she could understand, but at this time she had lost consciousness again. But Ryo Hosokawa knew that she was dragged up by that hand and came to a space filled with warm white light. I don't know how long it took, but there were whispers in my ears, like a fierce argument or a low plea, but it didn't feel like before. Hosokawa Ryo felt a warm current flow out of her heart, and then flowed to her limbs. Feeling the sensation coming from her limbs, Hosokawa Ryo discovered that the white space in front of her began to gradually break up. It was better to describe it as dissipating. Hosokawa Ryo didn't know why she had this idea until she opened her eyes. "White, still white, haven't you come out yet? Hosokawa-kun, wake up." A gentle voice reached Hosokawa Ryo's ears, and his originally hazy brain suddenly woke up. Hosokawa Ryo turned his head instinctively, and then saw Lin Zi sitting aside, and then looked around, blocked by white curtains. Only then did she realize that she was in the school health room. But how did I get to the school health room? Feeling chilly, Hosokawa Ryo looked down and saw that she was still wearing a one-piece swimsuit. Hosokawa Ryo immediately pulled up the quilt to cover herself, her heart beating violently. "What did you do in front of Kingtian classmate? Hosokawa-kun, are you okay? Why are you face so red?" "No. It's okay, oh." Hosokawa Ryo raised his head and glanced at Lin Zion before burying his entire face on the quilt. "Then I'll go out first." I'll come in after classmate Hasakawa changes his clothes. Lindsay Ian pointed to the school uniform at the end of the bed. I brought your clothes here. I wonder if there's anything missing. A dull sound came from the quilt. After a while, when the door closed, Hasakawa Ryo's face left the quilt and carefully looked around. Because of the swimming class today, she didn't wear underwear, so she just put on her clothes. To be honest, this is normal. Many girls do this just for convenience. After putting on her clothes, Hasakawa Ryo got out of bed, and then walked around carefully. When she confirmed that there was no one in the health room, she was relieved, and then sat on the bed and began to recall what happened. Is it classmate Ching Tian? Hasakawa Ryo said to herself. She remembered that the last scene was Lindsay Ian rushing towards her, and then she lost consciousness, and those strange scenes gradually dissipated in her mind. Now she can only think of one thing. And she felt that as time went by, these images would soon disappear completely, and it was all like a strange dream. Hasakawa Ryo instinctively reached out to touch her body, muttering, "Did he carry me back?"